I think that there are some huge shifts going on right now, and I would call it two types of shifts. The first one, I think, is just the ability for startups to actually have a lot better of a chance of success in this field. And I think it's because startups are fundamentally people who love to innovate, who don't have much cash, and who are willing to take risks on cutting edge markets, even bleeding edge markets. And so before, hardware startups were, really hard because, you created a product, and for example, a camera, and you put it out there, and that was it. That was your final chance of making sure it didn't suck. And that was really hard. You needed a lot of QA, you needed a lot of power to present that. And now it's really fundamentally changing because you have software to back you up. So in a sense, hardware is much more forgiving now. Hardware is something that you put out there, and you can hear what the user really wants, what they like, what they don't like, and then you can respond like a software startup. And I think that's really exciting because you're managing two different frameworks of working on a business. One where you have to get everything right and you have to make sure it works, and one where you can continually innovate, you can experiment, and I think that's where all the excitement is for all of us. So I think it's a great time to do that. And the second is just, obviously I think we have healthcare troubles, and to be able to self-empower and to give people tools where they can really change their own lives is really exciting time. So that's the motivation, I think.
I also like to call hardware right now web hardware. I mean, it has become so cheap to iterate. I noticed that even the thing on your iPhone there was done on a 3D printer. Mm-hmm. And now anybody can print things on 3D printers really cheaply. And things are set up with China now that it is, even in very small quantities, to get samples back and to start working with production teams there in small factories, it's 10 times faster doing it there in China, and it only costs a couple $1,000s to get a first turn on a product. And so I've been overwhelmed by how much easier it is to start hardware in a web-oriented way.
And adding on that, I think that it's interesting in a couple ways. The building blocks have gotten a lot better more recently. There's a lot more sophistication in the blocks that you can pick off the shelf and put together, which let you get started really quickly. And so you don't necessarily, maybe for cost effectiveness over time, you want to think about doing it a little bit differently. But to get going and to get your first prototypes out there, I think it's huge. And then I think there's a real opportunity for taking devices and technologies that gives a startup a competitive advantage, and then also a sustainable competitive advantage versus an app which is perhaps mimicked a little bit more quickly. And then I think a second interesting thing is that the compliance aspect. You now can embed some intelligence to think about how does this device, how does this piece of hardware actually report back to the physician in a meaningful way, not big brotherish and watching, but to try to help patients recognize and correct behaviors that may be undermining them and resulting in being readmitted to the hospital at a high cost to the healthcare system. So.